Hi, everybody. This is Anthony.
Hi, good morning. It's Jolynn.
Hello, Jolene. How are you?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Not bad, not bad. Cannot complain. I think that's my usual answer always when someone asks, how are you? I'm like, I can't complain.
And
I
who would
could.
listen if we did complain?
Exactly, exactly. So we are thrilled to be, with you all again this February, where we're going to be talking about Black History Month and other things. We're going to tie things together. But first, we're just again say who we are, our information to reach us, and all that plugging information. So again, I'm Anthony Paradiso with Industrial I Services. We handle unemployment insurance cost control, but recently have developed a new HR support division. So if you're needing any help, support, an HR friend, so to speak, you can feel free to reach out to us. So my email is aparadiso, APARAD as in David, ISO at industrialui.com. Disclaimer, if you hear any barking, again, I always mention this, it's my dog, Buster or Lizzie. So if you hear them, they're just barking at people. Try to just ignore it if you can. And Jolene, how can people reach you?
J Haresign, HARESIGN at industrialui.com.
Perfect. Thank you. So I said this month we're gonna mention Black History Month, go into it, discuss it, and then also just kind of discuss the intersection of ethics as well. And just kind of how that I mean we always like to keep you know I think last year we did Black History Month, we referenced it, discussed it, and because it is important to definitely do that. The reason why ethics is kind of brought in now, and ethics is always an important topic to have. I just actually tomorrow afternoon actually speaking to I on what I started last semester. I started teaching or adjunct teaching or adjunct professor at a university, and the department chair asked me as a favor to come to her class tomorrow to speak on ethics to undergraduate class. So I'm speaking with them on ethics and tying that with hiring practices and DEIB. So I'm doing that, and it kind of thought on me this would be a great topic to have, this month. So that's where it kind of came around. So again, we're going to tie in ethics and Black History Month, um, and whatnot. But I wanted to also just mention, I'm not sure if people have, but a few weeks ago was Chinese New Year. It's the year of the dragon. My husband and I always try to go somewhere for, that day. Either we order in something, but the last several years we've gone to this really cool place. Um, Actually, I'll plug it so maybe we'll get some business out of it. I think it's China Chalet, I believe it's called it, and it's in Woodland Park, New Jersey. If you are in the area, I definitely recommend it. It's really really great. So just um just mentioning Chinese New Year and the Year of the Dragon.
Awesome.
Um, yeah, so I gotta always mention the Chinese New Year.
Hmm.
So anyway, so we're gonna go into the first question, Jolene. So what does it mean to be ethical, and why is it important in our daily lives?
Well, I think that I mean, if you look at the definition of ethics, it's, the set of moral principles that we as human beings fall back on to, conduct ourselves within, polite society and within a society that we live in. I think that there are some, nuances to ethics. Some people believe that it's unethical to eat animals, for example. Some people are vegan. Some people, part of their own personal ethics, personal morals is that they don't, believe in that. As far as like, there's a general set of ethical principles I think we can all agree on is, to be kind to one another and to, always act in the best interests of, yourself and others. And I think that it's important for us to always be mindful of that, especially now, in this day and age when we're going through a lot of turmoil, a lot of change, a lot of unrest. It's important that, to sometimes to go back to the basics, to remember that we're all, human beings, and especially, thinking about that in an HR perspective, you're the bridge between management and employees. And so you have this ethical, moral obligation to act in the best interest of the company and also in the best interest of the employee. And where those intersect, where they collide, where there might be some difference of, should I do this because it's best for the company? Should I do this for it's best of the employee? It's hard to really navigate that middle ground to figure out what is going to be the best outcome for everyone. So I think that's how it plays into not only our daily lives as, just regular humans, but also thinking about your work life. How do I conduct myself daily? And if I'm always thinking about how my actions can impact the company and how my actions are going to impact the employees, and how can I make it so that that we're always in the middle of the Venn diagram. That is what you should be thinking about as an HR professional.
Yeah, yeah, it's a very interesting thing because when you think of ethics too, there are, it's not about legal versus illegal, illegal. There, we all may have our own, different, our own differences on what we think is what is ethically sound and not. And it certainly is interesting and hard, especially as you mentioned, too, HR professionals need to think ethically, not even just for just for individually for ourselves, but also on behalf of the employer and the employee. We kind of have to look at what's best for both people, both, both sides. So it's very and everyone does see, not everyone, but a lot of people do see ethics, differently and views differently. And again, we're all raised differently, so we may, we see it differently. So it's definitely something to think about. And I mean, I have a few definitions that I got, and actually I'm using this for my PowerPoint tomorrow. It's by SCU. That this is who I found the best definitions. Ethics are the principles that guide our behavior toward making the best choices that contribute to the common good for all. Ethics is what guides us until the truth, keep our promises, or help someone in need. There is a framework of ethics underlying our lives on a daily basis, helping us make decisions that create positive impacts and steering us away from unjust outcomes. And just two of the ones that I liked. Ethic guides us to make the world a better place through the best choices we make. And then ethics in business is just as important as ethics in personal life. Business leaders have a unique role and a great responsibility in shaping the ethical culture of their businesses and thereby influence their broader communities as well. I just thought those are pretty good set of definitions. It's also it's interesting now because we may see what we see on television and the news, people that are in power may not be very ethically sound. So how do you teach or how do you educate others on what ethics is when not everyone is playing the same game? So again, it can be very challenging at times because we all have um, different views and perspectives on what ethics is. So it's just be very interesting. So I'm going to go into the next question. Don't mind me. I'm just turning my head because my other screen has the question. So in what ways can learning about diverse cultural perspectives help us develop a more nuanced understanding of ethics?
Well, I think that because we have differences as individuals, it's important to understand, where your individual moral code comes from. And a lot of it comes from what you've been exposed to, what's been modeled to you, in your formative years. And, a lot of I know we get really frustrated with people who are, in power and we're not seeing a lot of that being modeled right now. So it's even more important for you to model that in your own little circle, whether it's family, community, local, state, national, however you want to be involved, start with your own circle first. You can do outreach easier with the people who are closest to you. So if you start modeling that behavior, maybe volunteer somewhere and show the people in your community that, you are striving towards something better, promoting something that's better for your community, better for your society, then you're modeling that behavior, modeling that code for everyone else. But also understand that not everyone had the same cultural influences that you did. You know, we all come from different backgrounds. There's religion, I'm sure, that plays a part in it. There's, you know, cultural um understanding of, you know, rules in a certain, you know, culture. So I think it's important to really educate ourselves on, you know, and celebrate our differences as well as what makes us all the same.
Yeah, yeah, and I like how you worded it, you mentioned, you know, around, you know, kind of like, you know, who your circle is, like, you know, and kind of just kind of, you know, listen, we're going to be hearing things on the news, and you know, we're going to be, you know, we're going to be seeing things that of, you know, who are leaders, and we may not be agreeing with it, and we may be like, you know, we may be saying to ourselves, what the heck are they doing? Why are they doing this? But we can't really, you know, we don't have the power with ourselves to change that. We can only really change ourselves and what we're in control of. So we, you know, we can be in control of, you know, the circle that we belong to. You know, we can control, you know, who we work for. You know, who our friends are. You know, if you know, it's almost like when you're it's almost like if you're hiring somebody, you know, you can certainly ask questions about how they make ethical decisions. You know, and you can, you know, based on the answers, you may decide to hire that person or not. It's almost like, you know, you can kind of almost play that role in your friendship or your, you know, your employer. You know, you pick and choose, you know, you decide what's best, you know, who's the best people to be with, hang out with. If you find that they're not being ethically sound or moral, then it's up to you and how you want to, you know, how you want to deal with that. Either if you want to talk to the person, you know, bring it up to leadership, whatever it is. Um, but I like how you answered the, you know, you know, who your circle is and your surrounding. Because again, we can't mimic, but we can't always say, oh, well, our leaders are doing it this way. And if you're not happy with that, with how they are doing things ethically, it doesn't mean that we now should be kind of, you know, doesn't mean we should be acting like that or not putting our own selves to a higher standard. And I think that's where we're kind of, I see a lot of that happening now with the way the toxicity of politics and all of that. We're falling into that hole now where, you know, it's a little, it could be, you know, it's getting well, you know, it's toxic. So just a matter of trying to figure out that path you want to be in and doing what's right and what's ethically sound and moral and everything we mentioned as far as the definitions, what ethics is, and making sure that you're, again, as an HR professional, that you're representing the employer ethically, morally, and that you're, you know, and not even your, you know, your employer, but your employees and yourself, your individual self, because you want to do what's right versus what's wrong. So leading to the next question. So how can the celebration of Black history promote ethical values as such as inclusivity, empathy, and cultural appreciation within diverse societies?
So I think that if anything ever demonstrated or was the model of ethical behavior, it is the people who involved and created the civil rights movement. Um, and I think that we should all, you know, take their example. I mean, when I talk about starting in your local community, I mean, these are people who, you know, started in their own communities. You know, I think about people like um Myrlie Evers. You know, she started, you know, as the widow of Medgar Evers, and took decades for, you know, the person who killed her husband to come to justice. But she didn't stop there. She, you know, became really active in the civil rights movement and, you know, became the leader of the NAACP. And I also think about Marsha P. Johnson, who saw injustices within her community and, you know, became, you know, an icon in the gay rights movement, you know, by, you know, being involved in the Stonewall riots. And so I think about those people, although like you may not think being involved in a riot is an ethical or moral thing to look up to, but when you look at things in context, you know, there are a lot of things that um, precluded and came after that,
Hmm.
when I look at people like her and people that have been since that time that have really seen the outcomes of what has happened. And I think that we all should be, thinking about, as we celebrate Black History Month, who are the influences to you. I'm, a white female. I can't imagine the struggles of the African American community, but I can certainly have admiration for the people who, brought about the change that we can all agree that was desperately needed.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to have this conversation like we're having and discussing the history because even though these are things that happened years ago, we need to discuss them. We need to learn like what other people did to get where we are today. It's important to and it's also respectful on their individual on their for them. It's respect for us to discuss these things for these people too. They really because they put so much on the line on their lives to make other lives better and more enriched. And as Jolene mentioned too, I'm a white male. I cannot imagine the atrocities that African Americans went through. But I can only what I can only do now is help in the sense of educating um and just kind of educating from a white male's view, highlighting that I haven't gone through these experiences. I as a gay male, I have gone through my own experiences that I can relate to in some way or another, but still, I mean, African Americans have gone through atrocities, and even to this day, there's still many things happening. We have a long way to go. We have certainly come a long way, but there's so much more ways to go, and it is important to discuss ethics with Black History Month because they kind of go they do go they tie in and they do connect, because again we do want to do things that are ethically sound, that are again that are the best choices that contribute to the common good, which was one of the first things I mentioned, and the definitions with ethics. So we want to keep discussing these things. We want to highlight these histories because again we only learn from what has happened in the past. If we don't discuss these things, or if we diminish them, we're not gonna learn from either it could be past mistakes, or it could be it's just good to have these conversations, and just be upfront and be just talking with one another. 'Cause that's the only way we're all going to learn too, is by having these conversations, as difficult as they may be. Sometimes they could be difficult for some people, but it's just really really important to have them. And again, you may not even there may not be direct answers to your questions right away in one given afternoon if you're talking, but again, just having them are really important. So, how do we embed ethical behavior into our communities and institutions, fostering a lasting culture of integrity, empathy, and justice?
Yeah, I think I'll go back to what I said before, model it in your circle, model it in your family, your friends, your community, do the things that it can be hard sometimes to, especially central New York, New York up northeast, and it's in the middle of a blizzard and you're like, gosh, I don't want to go anywhere. I don't want to do anything. It's too cold. But then I think about, you know, the people who are unhoused and people who are suffering. And so, do I want to make the sacrifice to, not only help other people, but also help myself because it lets me understand, what a place of privilege that I come from. And that makes me reflect on, what I can do to make a difference, um, to people that I live and work with.
Yeah, and often when I do my when I discuss diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, I also go into, you have to do what's also comfortable for you. Listen, I'm not saying we're not saying you have to also go and do a march or do kind of a protest. You can do, you can volunteer somewhere where maybe you're helping little children, children with, either, whatever it is. You can maybe helping children or helping your community. It also could be just making sure that you are reading, maybe reading a book or two that a person of color wrote. So you can get that other you can get a viewpoint that you may have not received or have obtained prior. So it's not, so you have to do what's comfortable for you. Sitting on the sidelines, kind of doing nothing isn't the answer, but I think doing things that you are comfortable with, maybe joining a group with your friends. There's so much out there now too with virtual, and you can do virtual programs. You don't have to be in the same, we could be in different countries probably and help other communities out. So there's so much out there. So I think as you mentioned, yeah, joining your local communities, helping out. I think really it's just important just to have the conversations. Just keep having them. Again, they're going to be uncomfortable, but just, as employers out there, make sure that you are striving to have these continued educational programs. So, I know a lot of companies, have programs surrounding Black History Month or Pride Month. Certainly continue those. But I would recommend not just highlighting those things for that particular month. There should be continuous year round education. And again, you could also make it kind of fun too. Like you can do, like a potluck where people bring in, different foods that represent their ethnicity. Food is a great way of getting us together. We all love food. So if you I mean, I would, I love trying different things. I recently went a few weeks ago to a friend's house, and and she had Indian food, and I really haven't, I've never been exposed to really Indian food before, or I had a bias myself that Indian food usually is a spice, is always like, hot and spicy, but that isn't always the case, and you don't know that until you try it.
Mhm.
So, you know, um, just trying different things and getting out there is really the way to do it. But also while you are doing this, making sure that you also are keeping your ethics checked, that you're not making bad decisions. Again, and I'll read the first part again. Ethics are the principle that guide our behavior toward making the best choices that contribute to the common good for all. So, making sure you're keeping that in mind. And as HR professionals, it is hard because we're representing, the employer, the employee, and I also want to say ourselves. So it's very it's hard, challenging, but we are here for you. If you ever need if you ever need to speak to somebody, just your HR friend, Jolene and I are certainly here. We have the experience. We've been through a lot ourselves, so we can really help out in any way that we possibly can. Um, so that's a little plug to ourselves. Um, Anything else, Jolene, that you want to mention?
Yeah, one of the things that I found really effective, when we're talking about how do we bring ethics into the workplace is there's no better time when you're doing your training, whether it's compliance training or, training for, whatever, if you're conducting training for employees. I find it helpful to always tug at the little ethical heartstrings that people may have because, when you're at work, as an employee, you might think, well, why should I get involved in something that's happening in the workplace? I see something that happens. Why is it my job to let the HR person know? Why is it my job to, if I witness harassment, why do I have to get involved? It's none of my business. I'm just here to do a job. But I kind of reverse the roles a little bit and I say, okay, I understand feeling that way, but I also think that let's dive a little deeper into that. Like, what if this particular incident, what if, um, your sibling was at work and another employee stole car keys, cash, credit cards, and another person witnessed it? Wouldn't you want that person to come forward so that that person wouldn't get away with stealing from your sibling? Or what if your spouse was at work and being sexually harassed and another person witnessed it? Bring it home to them to show, to tug at their little ethical moral code, because when it's happening to you or your family, it changes the importance of it almost to them. So if we all have an obligation to, when we work together as a team, to look out for each other, not just as coworkers, but as human beings. So if you think about things in that context where something like this is happening to someone that you know, you love, you care about, um, it brings it into a better perspective for them to understand why it's important.
Yeah, it's a great point. That's great. Yeah, it's not, yeah, like you're saying, you may not, if something happens at work and you see something, if it's someone that you're not close to or you don't really know, but if this was someone that you as your sister or brother or parent, uncle, aunt, whatever, you would want this incident to be discussed and forecast out to the to leadership. So it's important to kind of think of that, like you mentioned, like think of it in a personal way. How would you would want somebody to reach out if it was someone that you loved or cared for. And you mentioned a great point too, as far as having that moral code. We all have that moral code just as humans. So certainly I think that's certainly a great point. But with that, we are almost out of time. We hope you all, gain some insight from this. If you ever have any topics, or if you want to be a guest, please feel free to reach out to us. Before we end, we'll give our email addresses again. But please, any ideas you have, any topics that you think would be a great addition to our monthly webcast, let us know. And again, surely if you want to be involved, feel free to let us know as well. We'll be more than happy to discuss further. You can reach me, A Paradiso at Industrial UI. And Jolene, how can they reach you again?
Jay Harrison at industrialui.com.
Perfect. Well, again, thanks so much. For any questions ever, reach out to us. We're here to be your HR friends. But thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.